She thought the panic attack on the train was the worst part of her night. But then, the Mafia boss grabbed her wrist at the gallery fundraiser and showed her a photo that made her blood run cold. His dead wife, murdered 3 months ago, who could have been her identical twin. He told her about illegal genetic experiments, children sold to the highest bidder, a conspiracy protected by senators and federal agents, and the institute that had turned them both into merchandise with those impossible violet gray eyes. And when she tried to run, his security blocked every exit, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. You were Subject 23. They paid $620,000 for you. And right now, there's a kill team hunting down every survivor who knows the truth. 20 minutes earlier. Lennox Vale had been white-knuckling it through another anxiety episode while commuters scrolled their phones, oblivious. 8 months in this city. 8 months since she'd walked away from the fragmented nightmares and the childhood she couldn't quite remember, and she still couldn't ride the train without her chest tightening. She pressed her forehead against the cold window, watching Chicago blur past, and thought about the sterile white rooms that sometimes surfaced in her dreams, the ones with observation glass and children who stopped crying. The Castellane Gallery wrapped around her like expensive silence. Soft amber lighting glinted off parquet floors, casting everything in the golden warmth that only serious money could buy. The space was nearly empty. Just a handful of donors scattered among the silk ropes protecting this month's collection. Contemporary realism, naturally. Low chamber music drifted from hidden speakers, mixing with hushed conversations and the soft click of heels on polished wood. Lennox made her way past a Freud portrait study, peeling off her coat and draping it over her arm. Her hands were still unsteady, the residual tremor from the attack refusing to fade. The event coordinator, Miranda Chen, gave her a subtle nod of recognition. She'd been here often enough in her role as assistant curator that her presence raised no questions. That's what she'd built here, a life where she raised no questions. Ms. Vale? Miranda appeared at her elbow, her black suit immaculate despite the early evening hour. She looked Lennox over with the practiced discretion of someone trained never to acknowledge discomfort. The Sargent watercolors are in the North Gallery. Shall I bring you the provenance files? No need, Lennox said, her voice steadier than she felt. Just familiarizing myself before Thursday's preview. Miranda nodded once and glided away. Lennox pressed her fingertips against the cool silk rope, trying to ground herself in something tactile, something real. The portrait's subject stared back at her with modernist judgment. She'd spent years studying faces like this, learning to read emotion in every brushstroke and shadow, but she'd never learned to read the dangers in her own past until the nightmares started. Her hand drifted unconsciously to her face, fingertips hovering near her left eye. The violet-gray irises that stared back from every mirror had been there her whole life, rare enough that strangers commented. 1 in 10 million, a geneticist had told her once, curious. She'd smiled politely and never went back. Some questions didn't have safe answers. She reached for a catalog from the display stand, checking the lot number for a mixed media piece she had no intention of discussing, just the motion of normalcy. Just the performance of someone who belonged here. That's when the atmosphere shifted. It wasn't dramatic, not at first. Just a subtle change in the energy of the room, like air pressure dropping before a storm breaks. The hushed conversations at the nearby stations grew quieter. Miranda straightened near the entrance, her professional demeanor replaced with something sharper, more alert. Even the music seemed to quiet, though Lennox knew that was impossible. Then the brass doors opened. 4 men entered, but only one commanded the space. He was tall, easily 6'3", with dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on classical sculpture. Sharp jaw, olive skin that caught the golden gallery light and turned it into something dangerous. His charcoal suit fit him with the precision that came from Italian tailoring and serious money. Every line emphasized broad shoulders and a lean, powerful build. But it wasn't his appearance that made Lennox's breath catch. It was the way everyone else reacted. Miranda moved immediately toward him without being summoned. The other donors shifted subtly, creating space. One of the men flanking him scanned the room with the methodical assessment of private security. This wasn't wealth. This was power. The kind that didn't ask permission. Lennox turned back toward the watercolors, her pulse inexplicably racing. She'd perfected the art of being invisible, of blending into gallery walls like another piece of expensive decoration. She just needed to maintain it for 10 more minutes, finish her walkthrough, and leave before… Ms. Vale? Miranda's voice cut through her thoughts. Lennox turned to find the coordinator standing beside her, wearing the kind of smile that preceded very expensive requests. Mr. Kane would like to meet you. The man was crossing the gallery floor toward them with predatory precision. His security detail hung back, professional and watchful. Up close, he was even more imposing. Not just his height, but the focused intensity in his dark eyes. He moved like someone who'd never been told no, and wouldn't recognize it if he was. Dashiell Kane, he said, extending a hand. His voice was smooth, controlled, with the faintest trace of old New York underneath the polish. I'm told you're responsible for the Baroque exhibition last spring. Exceptional curation. Lennox shook his hand automatically, her professional autopilot engaging. Thank you, Mr. Kane. Though most of the credit belongs to… She stopped. He'd gone completely still, his hand frozen mid-release of hers. The controlled expression on his face cracked, revealing something raw underneath. His eyes locked on hers with an intensity that made her skin crawl, studying her face like he'd seen a ghost. What Lennox didn't know was that in exactly 12 seconds, her entire world would detonate. The color drained from his features. His grip on her hand tightened. Not painful, but inescapable. What? Lennox tried to pull back. Your eyes. His voice dropped to something barely above a whisper, something lethal. He stepped closer, crowding into her space. Those exact eyes. That exact shade. Miranda had already retreated. The gallery felt suddenly vast and empty. One of his security men shifted position, blocking the exit with practiced subtlety. Mr. Kane, I don't… Violet Gray. He cut her off, his thumbs still pressed against her wrist where her pulse hammered. Genetic anomaly. 1 in 10 million. He reached into his jacket with his free hand and pulled out his phone, swiping with mechanical precision. My wife had them. He turned the screen toward her. The woman in the photo could have been Lennox's twin. Same bone structure, same unusual eyes, same honey brown hair. She was laughing at something off camera, holding a glass of wine at some outdoor event. Beautiful. Alive. Paloma Reyes, Dashiell said. His voice had gone flat, emotionless in the way that meant too much emotion. Investigative journalist, murdered 3 months ago. 2 bullets to the chest in an Arlington parking garage. His eyes bored into hers. And before you tell me this is coincidence, before you try to walk away, she was looking into illegal genetic experiments, children taken from state care, medical trials without consent. Lennox's vision tunneled. The white rooms, the observation glass, the tests she couldn't quite remember. She had your eyes, Dashiell continued, his grip still firm on her wrist. Your face. And someone executed her for what she knew about it. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more threat than shouting. So you're going to tell me right now, Ms. Vale, who are you really? And why are you walking around Chicago wearing my dead wife's face? If you felt that moment tighten in your chest, tap subscribe. The story only gets deeper from here. The gallery tilted. Lennox's free hand shot out to grip the silk rope, her knuckles white. Because she didn't have an answer. And the nightmares, the sterile rooms, The children, the eyes watching through glass, suddenly felt a lot less like dreams and a lot more like memories she'd spent 23 years trying to forget. What happened in the next 20 minutes would force Lennox to confront a truth she'd spent her entire adult life running from. The car was waiting outside. Not a request. A reality Lennox understood the moment Dashiell's hands settled at the small of her back, guiding her through the gallery's rear exit where Miranda somehow had her coat ready. No scene, no struggle. Just the cold efficiency of someone who'd orchestrated exits like this before. "I can't just leave," Lennox tried, her voice thin. "Your supervisor received a call 10 minutes ago," one of the security men said without looking at her. "Family emergency. You'll be on leave through the weekend." The black SUV's interior smelled like leather and threat. Dashiell sat across from her in the rear-facing seat, his phone already pressed to his ear, conducting business in low, clipped sentences that had nothing to do with her. As if kidnapping museum curators was just another item on his Thursday agenda. Lennox focused on breathing, on not spiraling, on the streetlights sliding past the tinted windows as they headed north, away from the loop, toward the lakefront estates where Chicago's real power lived behind gates and security systems. 20 minutes. That's how long it took to reach the compound. Wrought iron gates, a circular drive, a limestone mansion that looked like it had been transplanted from a European capital. The kind of wealth that didn't need to announce itself because everyone already knew. Dashiell was out of the car before it fully stopped, already moving toward the entrance. "Jax," he said to the lead security man, "I want the files. Everything Mateo compiled. Bring them to the study." Then to Lennox, without turning. "Inside." She followed because what choice did she have? The foyer was all marble and crystal, the kind of space designed to intimidate. A curved staircase swept upward to a second floor. Oil paintings lined the walls. Originals, her curator's eye noted automatically. Caravaggio style, late Renaissance. Worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. Dashiell led her down a hallway to a wood-paneled study that smelled like old books and expensive scotch. Floor-to-ceiling shelves, a massive desk, and on the far wall, a corkboard covered in photographs, newspaper clippings, and strings of red thread connecting them like a conspiracy theorist's fever dream. Except this wasn't theory. The center of the board held a photo of Paloma, alive, vibrant, those impossible eyes bright with intelligence. Around her, dozens of other images, buildings, documents, faces of children, and in the corner, a medical file with a name written in red marker. Subject 47. The truth Dashiell was about to reveal would shatter everything Lennox thought she knew about herself. "Sit," Dashiell said, gesturing to a leather chair. It wasn't a suggestion. Lennox sat. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Jax entered carrying a banker's box, setting it on the desk with a heavy thud. Dashiell pulled out file after file, spreading them across the polished surface with methodical precision. Crime scene photos, autopsy reports, research documents covered in Paloma's handwriting. 3 months ago, Dashiell began, his voice carefully controlled. "My wife told me she was close to breaking the biggest story of her career. A medical ethics scandal involving children in state care. She'd been investigating for 8 months. He pulled out a photo, Paloma standing outside a nondescript building. The Hale Institute for Advanced Pediatric Research. Legitimate on the surface. Millions in federal grants. Board of directors filled with senators and doctors. He slid another document toward Lennox. A child's medical record, heavily redacted, with one line highlighted. Genetic modification. Ocular pigmentation trial. Paloma was one of them, Dashiell continued. Taken from a group home in Queens when she was 4. Told her aunt she died in a fire. Instead, she spent 3 years in that facility being used as a lab rat for genetic enhancement experiments. Lennox's vision blurred. The words on the page swam. She got out when she was 7. Adoption placement to a family in Boston. She buried it. Became a journalist. Spent her whole adult life investigating corruption. His voice cracked, just slightly. And when she found out what they'd done to her, she couldn't let it go. He pulled out the final file. The one that made Lennox's stomach drop. Her own face stared back from a decades-old photograph. Child Services intake photo. Age 5. Dark hair, thin face, and those distinctive violet-gray eyes. Below it, a name she hadn't heard in 18 years. Subject 23. Lennox Vale. "You were there," Dashiell said. "Same facility, same trials, same goddamn eyes they gave you both." He leaned forward, his hands flat on the desk. Paloma found 12 survivors. She tracked down their files, their locations, started making contact. Someone found out. Someone decided she knew too much. The conspiracy that killed Paloma was bigger than either of them realized. And it was still hunting survivors. The room felt like it was closing in. Lennox couldn't breathe. Couldn't think past the roaring in her ears. "The autopsy showed professional execution," Dashiell continued, relentless. 2 shots, center mass, no witnesses, security footage corrupted, the kind of hit you pay 6 figures for. His eyes burned into hers. And 3 days before she died, she added one more name to her list of survivors she needed to find. A curator, Chicago, working under a name that didn't quite match her original birth records. He slid the file closer. "You." Lennox's hands found the armrests, gripping hard. "I don't remember any of this. I was adopted when I was 7. My parents, they never said anything about... because they didn't know." Jack spoke from his position by the door. "The Institute falsified records. Made it look like legitimate adoptions. Your parents thought they were saving an orphan, not taking in evidence." Dashiell pulled out one more photograph. Paloma's body on a morgue table, the sheet pulled back to show the bullet wounds. Whoever killed her is still out there, and if they were willing to execute a journalist for asking questions, they'll sure as hell come for a witness. Lennox stood on shaking legs. "This is insane. You can't just kidnap me and..." "You're not a prisoner." Dashiell's voice cut through her panic. "But walk out that door without protection, and you'll be a corpse." He moved around the desk, stopping just short of her personal space. "Paloma died because she tried to expose this alone. I'm not making that mistake twice." "So what? I'm supposed to trust you? A man who dragged me out of a gallery and showed me a conspiracy board like something out of a thriller movie?" "No," Dashiell said softly. "You're supposed to trust this." He pulled out a tablet, queued up a video file, and pressed play. What Paloma said next would change everything Lennox believed about her purpose. Paloma's face filled the screen. She was sitting in this same study, months ago, her eyes bright and determined. "If you're watching this, I'm dead," she said. Her voice was warm, certain. "Dash, mi amor. Don't do anything stupid. Let the police handle it." A sad smile. "Though I know you won't listen." The image shifted to a split screen. On one side, Paloma's childhood medical file. On the other, a document titled Project Constellation. "I found the others," Paloma continued. 12 survivors out of 47 test subjects. The rest died during trials or were disposed of when the program shut down in 2009. Hale is still operational, still protected by people in positions of power. Senator Ashcroft sits on their board. Director Vincent Hale runs the facility. She leaned closer to the camera. "If anything happens to me, find the others, especially Subject 23. Lennox Vale." She doesn't know what she is yet, but she's the key. She was the only trial that produced perfect results. Full ocular transformation with zero rejection. Hale's masterpiece. The video ended. Lennox stared at the blank screen, her entire worldview fracturing. This can't be real. Paloma spent the last year of her life making sure it was. Dashiell's voice was rough with grief. And she died protecting people like you. He moved back to the board, tapping the photo of the Hale Institute. They're still running, still protected, still hunting anyone who knows the truth. A new thought cut through Lennox's shock. You said 12 survivors. Where are the others? Jax pulled out another file. 3 are dead. Car accident, overdose, suicide. All in the last 6 months. All ruled accidental or self-inflicted. He met her eyes. The remaining 4 are in protective custody as of 2 days ago. We got to them before the cleanup crew did. Cleanup crew, Lennox repeated numbly. The people who killed Paloma, Dashiell said. And who'll come for you the moment they realize we've made contact. If you felt the weight of that revelation, tap subscribe. The system that created Lennox is about to show its true face. Through the study window, Lennox could see the lake beyond the estate walls. Cold, dark, endless. Somewhere out there was the life she'd built, the quiet anonymity she'd perfected, the safety of not knowing. It was already gone. She turned back to Dashiell, this dangerous stranger with his dead wife's evidence and his vendetta wrapped in grief. If I stay, if I help you, what exactly are we doing? His smile was sharp, humorless. We're finishing what Paloma started. We're burning the Hale Institute to the ground, destroying everyone who profited from it, and making sure no one else gets disappeared in the name of science. And if they come for me, then they go through me first. Dashiell's eyes were cold stone. Paloma died alone. You won't. Lennox looked at the board, at the faces of children who'd been erased, at Paloma's bright eyes, frozen in death, at her own medical file, stamped with words like subject and trial and successful modification. How long do I have to decide? Jax checked his phone. Guest rooms on the 2nd floor. Clothes, toiletries, anything you need. You've got until morning to choose. As Lennox moved toward the door, Dashiell's voice stopped her. She fought for 3 minutes after the first shot, dragged herself to her car, trying to reach the evidence she'd hidden. They put the second bullet in her before she could. His eyes met hers. Whatever you decide, do it knowing they don't hesitate. They don't show mercy. And they sure as hell don't leave witnesses. Lennox climbed the marble stairs to a guest room that cost more than her yearly salary. She didn't sleep, just sat by the window watching the lakeside and wondering if somewhere in those childhood nightmares was the truth about who she really was. By dawn, she'd made her choice. If they were coming for her anyway, she'd rather die knowing why. The decision Lennox made that night would set in motion a war against one of the most powerful conspiracies in the country. The conference room was on the 3rd floor, a space Lennox hadn't seen during her sleepless night. Glass walls overlooked the lake, now bright with morning sun. A massive digital screen dominated one wall. Around the table sat people who looked like they belonged in a Fortune 500 boardroom, not a vendetta conspiracy. Dashiell was already there, suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled to his elbows. Next to him sat a younger man with sharp features and Paloma's exact eyes. Violet gray, unmistakable. Lennox Vale, Dashiell said without preamble. Mateo Reyes, Paloma's younger brother and my intelligence specialist. Mateo stood extending a hand. His grip was firm, professional, but his eyes held the kind of grief that came from losing the person who'd raised you. She talked about you. Not by name. She didn't have it yet. Just Subject 23, the one who got away clean. I didn't know I needed to get away, Lennox said quietly, taking a seat across from them. That was the point. Jax entered carrying another box of files, this one newer, organized with military precision. The Institute's entire model depended on survivors not knowing what they were, scattered them across the country, falsified adoption records, created entire identities. He spread photographs across the table. 4 faces, all adults now, all with distinct, unusual features. "Sterling Hayes," Mateo said, pointing to a lean black man with startling amber eyes. Age 29, software engineer in Seattle. Subject 19, enhanced retinal color and low light vision. He thought he just had a genetic quirk until we showed him his medical files. Next photo. A Latina woman with silver white hair that clearly wasn't dyed. Bryn Salazar, 31. Lawyer in Phoenix. Subject 31. Melanin suppression trial. She's been covering it with hair dye her whole adult life. Thayer Locke. A pale man with heterochromia. 1 blue eye, 1 green. 28. Data analyst in Boston. Subject 12. Bilateral ocular modification. Thought it was a cool birth defect. The final photo showed a woman with vitiligo-like patches. Arden Finch, 26. Social worker in Atlanta. Subject 35. Dermal pigmentation trials. She's spent years in therapy for body image issues, never knowing someone gave her those scars on purpose. What Mateo revealed next would show Lennox just how many lives the Institute had destroyed. Lennox stared at the faces. "You said 3 others died." Mateo pulled up new images on the screen. Colby Vega, car accident, brake lines cut professionally. Silas Crane, overdose, toxicology showed forced injection. Iris Wolfe, staged suicide, no powder residue on her hands. His jaw clenched. All within 4 months of Paloma's death. All before we could reach them. "Someone's cleaning house," Dashiell said. "Systematically eliminating anyone who could testify about what happened at the Institute." Jax brought up a new file. "We've got the 4 survivors in secure locations. Private security, communications blackout, new identities temporarily, but they can't hide forever. And more importantly," he clicked to another document, "they're willing to testify, once we have enough evidence to guarantee convictions." "Which is where you come in." Mateo turned to Lennox. "Paloma's research hit a wall. The Institute's official records were destroyed in a fire in 2009. Any evidence that survived is locked behind lawyers, NDAs, and political connections." He pulled out a leather journal, worn and filled with Paloma's handwriting. But she found a pattern. He opened to a page covered in sketches. Constellation patterns. Stars connected by lines. The Institute categorized subjects using astronomical designations, Mateo explained. Not just numbers. Each child was mapped to a specific star system. The traits they were testing corresponded to the constellation's mythology. Lennox leaned forward. The sketches were meticulous. Orion. Cassiopeia. Lyra. "You were Cassiopeia," Mateo said, pointing to one pattern. "The Vain Queen." The Institute's notes called it aesthetic perfection trial, ocular pigmentation designed to be unforgettable. 1 in 10 million genetic occurrence, artificially created. He turned the page. Paloma was Lyra, the liar, the messenger. They were testing neurological enhancement, pattern recognition, memory retention. She had a photographic memory and didn't realize it was engineered. "Jesus," Lennox breathed. The truth about Project Constellation was worse than genetic experiments. It was a marketplace. "It gets worse." Dashiell took over, pulling up financial records on the screen. The Institute wasn't doing this for research. They were creating designer children for buyers, elite families who wanted genetic advantages for their kids. The trials were proof of concept. A new document filled the screen, Sales ledgers, dates, amounts, names redacted, but the figures weren't. Hundreds of thousands per placement. 23 successful adoptions between 2001 and 2009, Jack said. Children with enhanced traits sold to families who could afford to pay for perfection. The ones who didn't survive the trials, or whose modifications failed, were disposed of. Lennox's hands were shaking again. You're saying I was merchandise. You were inventory, Mateo said bluntly. Until the program was shut down. Someone in the federal government got wind of it, started asking questions. Hale scattered the remaining subjects through legitimate adoption agencies, destroyed the records, and went underground. He met her eyes. You got placed with a family in Milwaukee. Grew up thinking you were just a kid with pretty eyes. And the institute? Reopened 2 years later under new management, Daschle said. Director Vincent Hale, previously their lead geneticist, cleaned up the public image, focused on legitimate pediatric research, and buried Project Constellation so deep that only someone with Paloma's skills could find it. The room felt too small. Lennox stood, walking to the glass wall, pressing her palm against the cold surface. Behind her, she could hear papers shuffling. There's more, Mateo said quietly. Of course there is, Lennox muttered. Paloma's last research focused on current activity. She found evidence that the institute is still operational. Different methods, better hidden, but the core program never stopped. He pulled up surveillance photos. The Hale Institute's modern facility, all glass and steel and legitimacy. They're working with Senator Gerard Ashcroft. He sits on their board, funnels federal grants, provides political cover. A photo of Ashcroft appeared. Distinguished, gray-haired, the picture of respectability. And their enforcer, Jax added, pulling up a final image. The woman in the next photograph was responsible for Paloma's death, and she was hunting survivors. The woman was severe, dressed in dark clothes, her face sharp and cold. Sister Evangeline Cross, former director of a Catholic children's home that fed subjects to the Institute. Now she's their head of security. Paloma's last message mentioned her name. Said Cross was the one who personally oversaw the disposal of failed trials. Lennox turned back to the table. You're building a case. We're building a war, Daschle corrected. A case requires courts, judges, lawyers who might be on Hale's payroll. I want evidence so damning that they can't hide. I want every buyer, every politician, every doctor who profited from torturing children exposed. His eyes were cold fire. And then, I want them destroyed. Paloma wanted justice, Mateo said softly. Legal justice. Paloma's dead. Daschle's voice was flat. They made sure legal justice wouldn't touch them. So we do this the other way. Lennox looked at the board, at the faces of the survivors, at Paloma's journal filled with meticulous research. What do you need from me? Mateo slid a laptop toward her. Paloma's files are encrypted. She used your subject number as part of the password key. We can't access the final layer without your biometric data, retinal scans specifically. She knew I'd come here? She knew someone would find you, Mateo said. She built in fail-safes. The evidence she gathered is locked behind genetic keys from each subject. Yours, Sterling's, Bryn's, Thayer's, Arden's. She wanted to make sure only survivors could access the full truth. Daschle moved to stand beside Lennox. The 4 others have already provided their scans. Your data completes the set. Once we have full access, we can see everything Paloma discovered before they killed her. What Lennox was about to unlock would expose the full scale of the conspiracy. Lennox stared at the laptop. 1 retinal scan, 1 choice. And then no going back to the quiet life she'd built, the anonymity she'd perfected, the safety of not knowing. If I do this, she said slowly, I want to know everything. No more revelations, no more, by the way. Here's another nightmare. Full truth. Agreed, Dashiell said. And I want to meet the others, the survivors. I want to hear their stories. Already arranged, Jax confirmed. Secure video conference in 2 hours. Lennox looked at Mateo. Your sister. Did she know what this would cost her? His smile was sad. She knew exactly, but Paloma never walked away from a story, especially not one this big. He paused. She left something for you, in the journal. She wrote it before she died, like she knew you'd be the one reading it. He turned to the final page, Paloma's handwriting. Neat and certain. To Subject 23, Lennox. If you're reading this, it means they got me. It means I couldn't finish this alone. But you can. You were always meant to be the one who brings them down. Your eyes were their masterpiece. Make them pay for it. Paloma. Lennox took a breath, then another. Then she leaned toward the laptop. Let's see what she died protecting. The retinal scanner hummed to life. The video conference connected at exactly 2:00 p.m. What the survivors revealed would prove just how far the conspiracy reached. 4 faces appeared on the screen, each in a different safe house, each wearing the same expression, wary, exhausted, and angry. Everyone, this is Lennox Vale, Mateo said from beside her. Subject 23. She's just been read in. Sterling Hayes spoke first, his amber eyes sharp even through the digital connection. The curator, Paloma mentioned you in her notes, said you were the only one who didn't know. I'm making up for lost time, Lennox said quietly. Bryn Salazar's silver hair caught the light from wherever she was hiding. How much have they told you? Enough to know we were all sold like cattle, Lennox replied, and that someone's killing us to keep it quiet. Welcome to the nightmare, Thayerlock said, his mismatched eyes intense. I've been living in a hotel room for 3 weeks because going home means getting a bullet like Colby. Arden Finch, her vitiligo patches stark against her skin, leaned toward her camera. Did they tell you about the buyers? Financial records, Lennox confirmed. Ledgers showing payments, but no names. That's what Paloma was after, Sterling said. The full list. Proof of who purchased children and what they paid for specific traits. She said it went all the way to the top. Senators, CEOs, entertainment executives, people whose careers would detonate if the truth came out. Dashiell stepped into frame, which is why they can't let any of you testify. You're living evidence. Every modified trait, every medical record, every memory, you're witnesses they can't discredit or disappear quietly. They're doing a pretty good job of disappearing us loudly, Bryn said. 3 dead in 4 months. When do the rest of us get our turn? What Jax revealed next would force them to make a dangerous move. Not if we move first. Jax pulled up new intel on the main screen. We've been surveilling the Hale Institute for 2 months. Their security is private military. Their data is air-gapped. And their political protection is formidable. But they have one vulnerability. A new face appeared on screen. Older man, nervous energy, coffee shop setting. Clyde Rains, former maintenance worker at the Institute from 2006 to 2010. He witnessed the program before it went dark. Paloma's source, Mateo explained. He's been feeding us information for months. He reached out after she died, said he had something she'd been trying to confirm before they killed her. The image shifted to satellite footage of a building. Older, industrial, located in an abandoned district of Chicago's South Side. The original Institute facility, Jax said. Condemned in 2009 after the fire. Officially empty. But Clyde's been monitoring it. Someone's been accessing the building after hours. Security teams, vehicles with government plates. And he clicked to thermal imaging. Occupied basement levels where there shouldn't be power. They're storing something there, Sterling said immediately. The original records, The ones they claimed were destroyed. That's Clyde's theory, Dashiell confirmed. And he's willing to meet. Today. To hand over evidence Paloma died trying to obtain. It's a trap, Thayer said flatly. Obviously it's a trap. Probably, Dashiell agreed. Which is why we're going in expecting one. Lennox looked at the surveillance images. The building was a corpse, windows broken, walls tagged with graffiti. If Paloma didn't get this before she died, why is he offering it now? Because 3 more people are dead, Mateo said quietly. And Clyde knows he's next. He wants protection in exchange for everything he has. Where's the meet? Bryn asked. Holy Name Cathedral, Jack said. Public, lots of witnesses, hard to stage an accident. 5:00 p.m. Clyde will be in the 3rd pew from the back, left side. And if it goes sideways? Arden asked. Dashiell's smile was cold. Then we find out who shows up to kill him, and we work backward from there. The survivors signed off one by one, heading back to their secure isolation. Lennox stood, her legs stiff from sitting. I'm coming with you. No, Dashiell said immediately. Not negotiable. Lennox crossed her arms. You said full truth, no more revelations. I want to hear what Clyde has to say directly. Besides, she met his eyes. If this is a trap, they already know who you are. But they don't know I've made contact. I'm an unknown variable. Which makes you a target, Jax countered. I've been a target since birth, Lennox shot back. I just didn't know it. Mateo looked at his brother-in-law. She's right, and Paloma would have gone. Dashiell's jaw clenched. Finally. You stay in the car unless I say otherwise. And if shooting starts, you do exactly what Jax tells you. Deal. What waited for them at the cathedral would prove the conspiracy was one step ahead. Holy Name Cathedral rose from Chicago's streets like a stone monument to old-world faith. Gothic spires, massive wooden doors, stained glass that turned afternoon light into colored prayers. The kind of place that had stood for over a century and would stand for another, indifferent to the sins conducted in its shadow. They arrived at 4:45 p.m. Jax parked the SUV with clear sightlines to all exits. 2 more of Dashiell's security team were positioned in unmarked cars at opposite corners. Clyde will be early if he's serious, Jax murmured, scanning the surrounding buildings through binoculars. Late if he's setting us up. Or dead if someone got to him first, Dashiell added. At 4:53, a man entered the cathedral, late 50s, wearing a maintenance uniform and carrying a backpack. He moved with the nervous energy of someone who knew he was being watched. That's him, Mateo confirmed, checking his phone against a photo. Dashiell was already moving. Jax, stay with Lennox. Mateo, you're with me. Wait, Lennox started. Car, Dashiell said firmly. Unless shooting starts. They disappeared through the cathedral's main entrance. Through the SUV's tinted windows, Lennox watched tourists and worshippers come and go, oblivious to whatever was about to unfold inside. How long? She asked Jax. Meeting should take 10 minutes. Transfer of evidence, confirmation of protection terms, extraction. He was still scanning rooftops. If they're not out in 15, we go in. 12 minutes passed, then 13. At 14 minutes, the side door of the cathedral burst open. Sister Evangeline Cross had been waiting for them all along. Clyde stumbled out, clutching his backpack, eyes wide with terror. Behind him, moving with predatory calm, came a woman in dark clothes. Severe features, cold eyes. Sister Evangeline Cross. Jax breathed, already reaching for his weapon. Lennox's hand was on the door handle. They need... Wait! Jax's voice was steel. Cross closed the distance to Clyde in 3 strides. Her hand shot out, grabbed his collar, and slammed him against the cathedral wall hard enough that Lennox heard the impact from inside the car. Then Dashiell and Matteo appeared from the main entrance, flanking Cross's position. Whatever Dashiell said was lost to distance, but his body language was clear. Lethal intent, barely restrained. Cross smiled. Actually smiled. Then she released Clyde, stepped back, and raised her hands in mock surrender. More movement. From across the street, a black sedan pulled up. Government plates. 2 men in suits emerged, federal badges visible. "Shit," Jax muttered. "They brought official cover." The scene played out like choreography. The federal agents approached Dashiell. Words exchanged. Cross helped Clyde to his feet. Helped him, like she was the Good Samaritan. One of the agents took Clyde's backpack. Began examining its contents right there on the street. Then Clyde looked directly at the SUV. His eyes met Lennox's through the tinted glass, and his expression shifted to pure horror. He grabbed the agent's arm, pointing at the vehicle, shouting something. "We're blown," Jax said, starting the engine. "Hold on." But before he could pull out, Cross was striding toward them, her hand resting casually on something beneath her jacket. She stopped 3 feet from Lennox's window, tilted her head, and mouthed 2 words. "Hello, 23. If this moment made your blood run cold, subscribe." The Institute's enforcer knows exactly who Lennox is and where to find her. Then she turned and walked away, leaving Clyde in the custody of federal agents who were now very interested in why a Mafia boss was meeting with an Institute informant. Dashiell was back in the car seconds later, his face dark with rage. "Drive." "What happened?" Lennox demanded as Jax pulled into traffic. "Set up," Matteo said. Clyde was wired. Everything he said was transmitted to Cross and her federal handlers. "He gave them up," Dashiell said. "The other survivors, locations, new identities, everything. In exchange for immunity." Lennox felt her stomach drop. "Sterling, Bryn..." "Already moving," Jax said, phone pressed to his ear. "Extraction teams are pulling them now, but it's going to be close." "And the evidence?" Lennox asked. Matteo held up his phone, showing a photo he'd managed to snap. Clyde's backpack contained copies of medical records. Our copies. The ones we gave him to verify his information. Cross now has proof that we've been coordinating with the survivors. "Which means what?" "Which means," Dashiell said, his voice deadly quiet, "the Institute knows we're hunting them, and they know exactly who's helping us do it. What happened next would force them into the most dangerous gamble of all." Lennox's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against every instinct, she answered. Sister Evangeline Cross's voice was silk over razor wire. "Subject 23, Lennox. What a pleasure to finally make contact. Did you enjoy the show?" "Who are you?" "I think you know. I'm the woman who kept you children safe, fed you, educated you, prepared you for your purpose." A pause. "And I'm the woman who'll be handling your disposal now that you've become inconvenient. Touch any of them and what?" Cross laughed. "You'll run to the authorities? With what evidence? Dashiell Kane's conspiracy theories? A dead journalist's paranoid research?" Her voice hardened. "I've been cleaning up the Institute's messes for 20 years. You're just another mess." "Paloma wasn't a mess," Lennox said. "She was going to expose all of you." "Paloma Reyes was a product who forgot her place, just like you're about to." The line went dead. Jax was already coordinating on his phone. "Sterling's secure. Bryn's team is 30 seconds out. Thayer, wait, hold on." His face went pale. "We've got a situation in Boston." The speakerphone clicked on. Gunfire, shouting, a man's voice, Thayer's. yelling coordinates. Then silence. Thayer, Mateo said into the phone. Thayer, report. More silence. Then, he's hit. Shoulder wound. We're getting him out. But they had a full team waiting. Someone leaked the safe house location. Clyde, Dashiell said. He gave them everything. Lennox looked out the window at Chicago blurring past. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that somewhere in this city, a conspiracy was hunting down witnesses to its crimes. What do we do now? She asked. Dashiell's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. Now we stop playing defense. Paloma spent a year gathering evidence. We have pieces of it. Her journal, the medical files, the survivor testimonies. But the full picture, the proof we need to destroy the Institute completely, is locked in that abandoned facility. The place Clyde mentioned, Lennox said. With the occupied basement. That's a fortress, Jax protested. Private security, government protection. And now they know we're coming. Then we don't give them time to prepare, Dashiell said. We hit them tonight. Fast, surgical, and we take everything we can carry. Mateo looked at his phone, at the messages flooding in from the extraction teams. Paloma spent months planning how to access that building. She never got the chance. Then we'll finish what she started, Lennox said. Dashiell turned to look at her. This isn't a gallery fundraiser. People are going to die tonight. People are already dying, Lennox replied. At least this way, we choose who. The raid they were about to launch would either expose the conspiracy or get them all killed. The SUV turned toward the south side, toward the condemned building where the Institute's secrets were buried. And somewhere behind them, Sister Evangeline Cross was mobilizing her own team, racing toward the same destination. The only question was who'd get there first. The safe house was a converted warehouse in Pilsen, all exposed brick and industrial chic. Jax had called it the War Room. Looking at it now, digital screens covering every wall, tactical gear spread across tables, satellite imagery updating in real time, Lennox understood why. Dashiell stood at the main console, pulling up blueprints of the abandoned Institute facility. Built in 1987, 6 floors above ground, 3 below. The official records show basement levels flooded after the fire, condemned as unstable. But the thermal imaging shows active power sources in B2 and B3, Mateo added, highlighting the areas in red. Someone's using those floors. Jax brought up security footage from their surveillance. 2 entrances, main lobby, chained and sealed. Loading dock in the rear, also secured. But he zoomed in on a thermal signature. There's a 3rd access point, service tunnel connecting to the old subway maintenance system. Hasn't been used in decades, but the heat signature shows recent foot traffic. That's how they're getting in, Lennox said. That's how we're getting in, Dashiell corrected. The tunnel system connects to an access point 4 blocks away. We go in quiet, hit the basement levels, grab whatever they're storing, and extract before their security realizes we're there. And if we're wrong? Mateo asked. If there's nothing down there but empty rooms? Then we're no worse off than we are now, Dashiell replied. But Clyde specifically mentioned this location. Paloma circled it in her notes. Whatever's down there is worth protecting. What Lennox discovered in Paloma's journal would reveal the conspiracy's true scope. Lennox moved to the table where Paloma's journal lay open. The constellation sketches covered 2 full pages. Cassiopeia, Lyra, Orion, Perseus, Andromeda, each connected to a subject number. She was mapping more than genetics, Lennox said, her curator's eye catching details the others had missed. Look at the annotations. Each constellation has secondary notes, dates, locations, financial figures. Mateo leaned closer. She was tracking the buyers, matching purchased children to specific star systems. Not just buyers, Lennox flipped the page. Destinations. Subject 19, Sterling, was Orion, the hunter. Notes say Seattle Tech Sector, place 2003, 340K. Subject 31, Bryn, was Andromeda, the chained maiden. Phoenix legal family, place 2005, 280K. They were categorizing children by desired traits, Jack said, his voice hollow. Matching mythology to market demand. And pricing accordingly. Lennox traced the constellation lines. The more complex the modification, the higher the price. Paloma was Lyra, neurological enhancement, 590K. I was Cassiopeia, ocular perfection, 620K. The room went silent. Jesus, Matteo breathed. Dashiell's hands were clenched at his sides. What else did she map? Lennox turned the pages, her photographic memory, enhanced or natural, she wasn't sure anymore, cataloging every detail. She found a pattern in the placements. The buyers weren't random. They were networked. Look, she pointed to connection lines Paloma had drawn between different subjects. Subject 8 was placed with a family in Connecticut. Corporate executive. 2 years later, Subject 14 was placed with his business partner's family in Manhattan. Both children were Perseus constellation, leadership traits, enhanced decision-making capability. She was tracking a network, Jack said, an organization of buyers who knew each other. More than that. Lennox flipped to another page. She was tracking the facilitator, someone who connected buyers to the institute, arranged payments, coordinated placements, someone with access to elite circles and enough power to keep it all quiet. The name at the center of Paloma's web would change everything. There, at the center of the web Paloma had drawn, was a name circled in red ink. Ashcroft. Senator Gerard Ashcroft, board member of the Hale Institute, current chair of the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services. He wasn't just protecting the institute, Matteo said. He was running their distribution network. Dashiell brought up Ashcroft's file. Distinguished political career, 3 decades in Congress, millions in campaign donations from healthcare and pharmaceutical companies, clean reputation. Until now, Dashiell said. Paloma built the frame. We just need to fill in the evidence. Which is in that basement, Lennox said. Matteo's phone buzzed. He checked it, his face tightening. Thayer's stable. Surgery went well. But the attack team had federal-grade equipment. Someone's funding Cross with serious resources. Ashcroft, Jack said. Has to be. Then we hit tonight, Dashiell decided. Before they can relocate whatever's in that facility. Before they can kill anyone else. He pulled up a tactical map. Jax, you're on point. Matteo. Tech support and communications. I'll handle security if we encounter resistance. And me? Lennox asked. You're the key, Dashiell said. Paloma's notes suggest the evidence is locked behind the same biometric security the Institute used for the trials. Retinal scans, DNA authentication. If we find the archive, we might need your genetic markers to access it. Subject 23, reporting for duty, Lennox said, her voice harder than she expected. When do we leave? Midnight. Dashiell checked his watch. Gives us 6 hours to prep, coordinate extraction, and make peace with the fact that we're breaking into a federally protected facility to steal evidence of crimes that officially don't exist. Paloma would have loved this, Matteo said quietly, touching his sister's journal like a prayer. Paloma would have told us we're insane, Dashiell corrected. Then she'd have gone anyway. The hours before midnight moved like a countdown to something irreversible. Jax ran tactical drills. Matteo coordinated with the teams protecting the other survivors. Dashiell made phone calls in low, intense conversations that Lennox didn't ask about. She spent the time with Paloma's journal, memorizing every detail, every connection, every piece of the puzzle the dead woman had left behind. The constellations, the buyers, the network that had turned children into commodities. At 11:30 p.m., she found a page she'd missed. Tucked in the back, written in different ink, like it had been added last. To whoever reads this, probably Dash, knowing his stubborn heart, don't let this consume you. The evidence matters, justice matters, but so does living. Don't let them steal that from you too. P. Below it, one more line. 23 was always the strongest. Trust her. Lennox closed the journal carefully. Across the room, Dashiell was strapping on body armor with the mechanical efficiency of someone who'd done it too many times. Your wife knew you'd do this, Lennox said. He didn't look up. Paloma knew I'd do anything for her, even things she'd hate. She wanted justice, not vengeance. She's dead. His voice was flat. She doesn't get a vote anymore. But the survivors do, Lennox pressed. Sterling, Bryn, Thayer, Arden, they deserve to see these people prosecuted, not executed. Dashiell met her eyes. And if the evidence we find tonight isn't enough for prosecution, if Ashcroft's protection runs too deep, what then? Then we find another way. There is no other way. He turned back to his gear. The system that's supposed to protect people like you is the same system that sold you. Paloma believed she could expose it and walk away. She was wrong. So we're supposed to what? Become killers? We're supposed to survive. Dashiell's eyes were cold. And make sure no one else gets turned into merchandise. Jax appeared in the doorway. Transport's ready. Time to move. What they were about to walk into would test every one of them. The warehouse emptied in controlled silence. Lennox followed Dashiell to an unmarked van, her heart hammering. This was it. No more theory. No more preparation. Just the abandoned building and whatever secrets were buried in its condemned basement. The city slid past the windows, oblivious. Somewhere out there, Sister Evangeline Cross was mobilizing her own response. Senator Ashcroft was making calls, pulling strings, ensuring his network stayed protected. And in a grave in Chicago's north suburbs, Paloma Reyes lay waiting for the justice she'd died pursuing. The van stopped 4 blocks from the target. Jax killed the lights. Radio check, he said into his comm. All teams confirm. 3 responses crackled back. Perimeter secure. Extraction ready. Medical on standby. Dashiell looked at Lennox. Last chance to stay in the van. Not a chance. Then stay close, follow orders, and if I say run, you run. Understand? Understood. They moved into the Chicago night, toward the condemned building where the Institute's ghosts were waiting. And deep in those flooded basement levels, in an archive that officially didn't exist, the evidence that could destroy an empire sat in climate-controlled darkness, waiting for Subject 23 to come home. The tunnel entrance was hidden behind a rusted utility door in an alley that smelled of trash and neglect. Jax picked the lock in 15 seconds, the mechanism giving way with barely a sound. Beyond, a concrete stairway descended into darkness that felt older than the city above. Lights, Jax whispered, clicking on a tactical flashlight. The beam cut through the black, revealing walls covered in decades of grime and graffiti. Water dripped somewhere in the distance. The air tasted like rust and abandonment. They descended single file. Jax first, then Dashiell, then Lennox, with 2 more security team members bringing up the rear. The stairway ended at a maintenance tunnel that stretched in both directions, its ceiling threaded with ancient pipes and electrical conduits. East, Jax said, consulting his phone's GPS. 400 meters, then we should hit the service access to the Institute's basement. They moved through the tunnel in silence, their footsteps echoing off concrete. Lennox's pulse hammered in her ears. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every sound could be security waiting to ambush them. But the tunnel remained empty. Abandoned. Exactly as Clyde's intel had suggested. At the 400-meter mark, Jack stopped at a steel door set into the wall. Unlike everything else down here, this door looked maintained. New hinges, fresh paint, a modern keycard scanner mounted beside it. "This is it," he murmured. "Active security. Whatever's on the other side, they're protecting it." Mateo's voice crackled through their earpieces. "I've got eyes on the scanner. Give me 30 seconds. Through her own earpiece, Lennox could hear rapid typing. Mateo was in the van 4 blocks away, tapped into the building's security network through a back door Paloma had discovered months ago. "Scanner's model KX7, Mateo said. "Standard corporate security. I can loop the access log, but you'll trip internal sensors the moment you open that door. You'll have maybe 3 minutes before their response team mobilizes." 3 minutes to find the archive and get out, Dashel said. "Doable." "Assuming we find it immediately," Jax countered. "And assuming it's not behind additional security." "Only one way to know." Dashel looked at Lennox. "Ready?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. "Mateo," Dashel said into his comm. "Open it." A soft beep. The lock disengaged. What they found on the other side would validate everything Paloma died trying to prove. Jax pulled the door open, weapon raised. Beyond was a corridor lit by emergency lighting, clean and modern in stark contrast to the tunnel they'd just left. The floor was polished concrete. The walls were painted institutional white. And at the far end, another door marked with a biohazard symbol and the words, "Authorized personnel only. Level B3. "That's our target," Dashel said. They moved quickly, clearing the corridor. No guards, no cameras, or at least, no visible ones. The silence felt wrong, like walking into a trap that hadn't been sprung yet. The B3 door required another keycard scan. Mateo bypassed it in seconds. Beyond was a large room that had once been a laboratory. Stainless steel tables. Industrial sinks. Cabinets that had held medical equipment, now empty. But along one wall stood something that didn't belong in an abandoned facility. A modern server rack. Industrial grade. Powered and running, its cooling fans creating a low hum that filled the space. "Data storage," Jax breathed. "They're keeping digital records down here." Lennox moved closer. Connected to the server rack was a workstation, its screen dark but clearly functional, and mounted beside it was a biometric scanner. Retinal identification. "Paloma was right," she said. "They locked the evidence behind genetic authentication. Can you access it?" Dashel asked. Lennox approached the scanner, her heart racing. The screen flickered to life as she drew near. Displaying a simple interface. Hale Institute Archive Project Constellation. Authorized access only, biometric verification required. Below it, a list of subject numbers. 03, 12, 19, 23, 31, 35, 47. Her number. Sterling's. Bryn's. Thayer's. Arden's. Paloma's. They programmed the survivors' genetic markers as access keys, Mateo said through the comm. "Paloma must have discovered this before she died. That's why she was tracking all of you down. She wanted you to be the ones to expose it," Dashel said quietly. "Not investigators, not lawyers, the survivors." Lennox was about to unlock the truth that cost Paloma her life. Lennox positioned herself before the scanner. A red laser beam swept across her eye, warm and invasive. The system hummed, processing. Then, access granted. Subject 23, Cassiopeia. The screen changed, displaying a directory structure. Folders upon folders, organized by year, by subject number, by trial designation. Decades of data. My God, Jax whispered. It's everything. Download it, Dashiell ordered. All of it. Mateo's fingers flew across his remote keyboard. Starting transfer now. But this is terabytes of data. Even with our bandwidth, we're looking at 8 to 10 minutes minimum. We don't have 10 minutes, Jax said, checking his watch. We've been inside for 90 seconds. Security response time is 3 minutes, maybe less. Then we buy time, Dashiell said. He turned to his security team. Defensive positions. Nobody gets through that door. Lennox watched the download progress bar crawl forward. 1%. 2%. The data flowing out represented years of crimes. Children modified, sold, disposed of. All the evidence Paloma had died trying to obtain. There's something else, she said, clicking through the directories. Look at the dates. Recent entries. This year. She opened a folder marked 2024. Active trials. Inside were medical files, new subjects, children, current photographs showing kids in hospital gowns, standing against measurement backgrounds. Subject 101, Subject 102, all the way to Subject 127. The Institute wasn't just hiding their past crimes. They were still creating victims. They're still running the program, Mateo said, his voice shaking with rage. Right now. Active trials. Where? Dashiell demanded. Lennox clicked through files. Multiple facilities. The main Hale Institute, a research center in Virginia, another in California. She pulled up a document marked placement contracts. And they have buyers lined up. Families, organizations, all waiting for successful modifications. The download hit 10%. Through the door behind them came the sound Lennox had been dreading. Footsteps, multiple sets, moving fast. Contact, Jax said, taking position behind an overturned lab table. At least 6 hostiles armed with automatic weapons. Dashiell moved to Lennox's side, his body positioned between her and the door. How long, Mateo? 7 minutes, maybe 6 if I compress the data, but we'll lose some file integrity. Do it, Dashiell ordered. The woman who walked through that door next had murdered Paloma with her own hands. The door burst open. Sister Evangeline Cross entered first, flanked by men in tactical gear. Federal contractors by the look of them. Professional killers in everything but name. Cross's cold smile widened when she saw Lennox. Subject 23. I knew you couldn't resist coming home. This isn't my home, Lennox said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. It's a crime scene. It's the birthplace of human perfection, Cross corrected. She gestured to her team, who fanned out, weapons trained on Dashiell's men. You are all such beautiful successes, Paloma. You, the others. And you threw it away to live ordinary lives. You killed her, Dashiell said, his voice lethal. You put 2 bullets in my wife. I gave her a mercy she didn't deserve, Cross replied. She was going to destroy everything. 20 years of progress, of evolution, of creating something better than nature's random lottery. Her eyes moved to the downloading data. Just like you're trying to do now. Progress, Lennox said. You call torturing children progress? I call it necessity. Cross moved closer, her team maintaining their positions. The world is full of mediocrity. We were creating excellence. Children who would lead nations, cure diseases, change the course of human history. And you want to destroy that because you can't understand the vision. I understand perfectly, Lennox said. You sold children to the highest bidder and called it science. Cross's expression hardened. Step away from the computer. No. The standoff that followed would determine whether decades of crimes saw the light of day. The word hung in the air. Dashiell shifted, ready to move. Jax's finger tightened on his weapon's trigger. "You're outnumbered and outgunned," Cross said. "Your security team stands down. You surrender the data, and maybe you walk out of here alive. Or," Dashiell said quietly, "you leave right now, and we don't release the files we already transmitted to every major news organization in North America." It was a bluff, but Cross's eyes flickered with uncertainty. "Mateo," she said, clearly recognizing the name from Paloma's files. "The journalist's brother. You coordinated this." She pulled out her phone, pressed a button. "Your location has been transmitted to federal authorities. FBI is 3 minutes out. You'll be arrested for breaking and entering, theft of classified research, and conspiracy." "Classified research," Mateo's voice crackled through their comms. Interesting way to describe human trafficking. The download hit 40%. "You can't win this," Cross said. "Even if you get that data out, Senator Ashcroft has protections at every level of government. Judges, prosecutors, FBI directors. The evidence will disappear before it ever sees a courtroom." "Maybe," Dashiell said, "but you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, wondering when it surfaces. When someone Ashcroft doesn't control decides to look closer. When one of the survivors decides they've had enough of hiding." Cross raised her weapon, pointing it directly at Lennox. "Or I end this right now. Kill the key witnesses. Destroy the evidence. Problem solved." "Shoot me and you trigger a dead man's switch," Lennox lied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Files go public automatically. Kill all of us. Same result. You can't silence everyone." 53% wasn't enough data, but it might be enough to matter. The standoff held. Cross's finger on the trigger, Dashiell's hand moving incrementally toward his own weapon. The download crawling toward 50%. Then, from somewhere above, came the sound of sirens. Multiple vehicles. Federal response, just like Cross had promised. "Time to choose," Cross said. "Surrender or die. Because in 60 seconds, this building will be swarming with agents who answer to people I control." Lennox looked at the screen. 53%. Not enough, but maybe enough to matter. "Mateo," she said quietly, "whatever we have so far, secure it. Multiple redundant backups. Encrypt and scatter it." "Already done," he replied. "Cloud storage, physical drives, distributed across 6 locations. They'd have to find them all to stop this." Cross's expression shifted. She knew she'd lost. "Kill them," she ordered. The laboratory erupted in gunfire. Jax moved before Cross finished speaking, his weapon up and firing in controlled bursts. One of the tactical team members went down, his armor stopping the round, but the impact sending him sprawling. Dashiell grabbed Lennox, pulling her behind the server rack as bullets chewed into concrete and steel. The room filled with the deafening crack of automatic weapons and the sharp smell of gunpowder. "Mateo!" Dashiell shouted into his comm. "We need an exit route, now!" "Working on it," Mateo's voice came back, strained. "Building schematics show an emergency access in B3, northwest corner. Should connect to the old steam tunnels." "Should?" Jax yelled, returning fire. "It's 80-year-old architecture. Nothing's guaranteed." The download hit 70%. Cross had taken cover behind the lab tables, her team laying down suppressive fire. They weren't trying to kill yet. They were trying to pin Dashiell's team down long enough for federal backup to arrive. "We can't fight the FBI," Lennox said, stating the obvious. "We're not going to," Dashiell replied. He pulled a compact device from his vest, set it on the floor, and pressed a button. Smoke grenades. 30 seconds. The download. We'll finish or it won't. But we're not dying down here. He looked at Jax. On my mark, we move for that northwest exit. Covering fire, then fall back in pairs. The smoke grenades deployed, thick white clouds billowing through the laboratory. Visibility dropped to nothing in seconds. Now! Dashiell yelled. They had seconds to escape before the FBI cut off every exit. They moved through the smoke, Jax leading with his weapon up. Dashiell keeping Lennox close. Behind them, Cross's team fired blind, rounds sparking off metal and concrete. The northwest corner held a door marked emergency access only. It was locked, but Jax put 3 rounds into the mechanism and kicked it open. Beyond was a narrow corridor, more of the old infrastructure, leading to a rusted ladder that descended into darkness. Down, Dashiell ordered. Lennox went first, her hands finding rungs slick with condensation. The ladder dropped 20 feet to a tunnel system even older than the one they'd entered through. Brick walls, standing water, the smell of decay. Jax and Dashiell followed, their team providing cover until the last moment, then rappelling down and sealing the access door behind them with a magnetic lock. That'll buy us maybe 2 minutes, Jax said. Mateo, where does this tunnel lead? Dashiell asked. Give me a second. Typing sounds. Okay, you're in the original 1920s steam system. Runs under the whole district. There's an exit point 6 blocks east. Comes out in a subway maintenance depot. Can we reach it before they cut us off? If you move fast. They ran through the tunnel, water splashing under their boots. Behind them, the sound of the door being breached. Shouts. Pursuit. Contact rear! One of Dashiell's men called out, then opened fire. The tunnel became a shooting gallery. Muzzle flashes lit up the darkness. Rounds ricocheted off brick. Someone screamed. One of Cross's team or one of theirs. Lennox couldn't tell. Keep moving, Dashiell urged, half dragging Lennox forward. The tunnel branched, then branched again. Mateo guided them through the maze. His voice their only lifeline in the darkness. Left, 50 meters, then right. There's a maintenance ladder marked with a yellow stripe. That's your exit. They found it. The ladder. The yellow stripe barely visible under decades of grime. Jax went up first, checking the area above. Clear. Move. They emerged into Chicago's night with 74% of the Institute's darkest secrets. Lennox climbed, her arms screaming. Dashiell came up behind her, then his remaining security team. They emerged in a concrete room filled with old subway equipment, exactly as Mateo had promised. Exits through the north door, Mateo said. Vans waiting 2 blocks north. You need to move before... The sound of helicopter rotors cut through the night. Before they deploy air support, Mateo finished grimly. FBI's pulling out all the stops. They're treating this like a terrorist incident. They burst out of the maintenance depot onto a Chicago street. The van was there, engine running, Mateo visible through the windshield. They piled in. The van peeled out before Dashiell's door was fully closed. Did we get it? Lennox gasped, her lungs burning. The data? Mateo held up a portable hard drive. 74% before the connection cut. Not everything, but enough. Enough for what? Jax asked. Mateo plugged the drive into his laptop, files cascading across the screen. Medical records, financial transactions, correspondence between Hale, Ashcroft, and dozens of other names. Video footage of trials, photographs of children. Enough to end them, Mateo said quietly. In 2 hours, they would unleash the truth, and the Institute's empire would begin to crumble. Dashiell took the drive, holding it like a grenade. This goes to every journalist Paloma trusted. Every prosecutor who isn't in Ashcroft's pocket. Every media outlet simultaneously, so they can't suppress it. They'll claim it's fabricated, Jax warned. Deepfakes. Conspiracy theories. Not with survivor testimony backing it up, Lennox said. She pulled out her phone, pulling up the secure chat with Sterling, Bryn, Thayer, and Arden. The four of them, plus me. 5 living witnesses with genetic evidence matching the files. Medical records that prove we were modified. Our existence validates the data. You'll be targets, Dashiell said. All of you. Ashcroft will use every resource to discredit or eliminate you. We're already targets, Lennox replied. At least this way, we fight back. Mateo's laptop pinged. News alerts. FBI has issued warrants for our arrest, breaking and entering, theft of classified material. They're spinning this as a raid on a legitimate research facility. They would, Dashiell muttered. Ashcroft's already controlling the narrative. Then we change it, Lennox said. She looked at the data, at the evidence Paloma had died trying to obtain. We release everything, tonight, before they can contain it. Flood the zone with truth until they can't bury it all. That's an act of war, Jax said. Good, Lennox replied. They've been waging war on survivors for 20 years. Time to return fire. Dashiell met her eyes, saw the same determination Paloma must have had, the same refusal to back down. Mateo, he said, contact every outlet on Paloma's list. Tell them we have the story of the decade and it publishes in... He checked his watch. 2 hours. Simultaneous release, maximum impact, no editorial control. They run it as is or they don't get it at all. On it, Mateo said, already typing. The van turned onto Lakeshore Drive, putting distance between them and the Institute. Police sirens wailed in the distance, converging on the south side. Lennox looked out at the city, at the lights reflecting off the lake. Somewhere out there, children were being held in facilities just like the one she'd escaped. Modified, sold, erased. Not anymore. In 2 hours, the world would know. And Senator Ashcroft, Director Hale, Sister Evangeline Cross, and everyone else who'd profited from Project Constellation would face something they'd never encountered before. Survivors who refused to stay silent. The media firestorm started at 3:47 a.m. Lennox watched it unfold from the safe house. Mateo's multiple monitors displaying news outlets across the country simultaneously picking up the story. The carefully crafted press releases, the supporting documents, the survivor testimonies. All of it hitting at once in a coordinated information bomb that Paloma would have admired. CNN broke it first with a banner. Decades-long child experimentation scandal exposed. MSNBC followed seconds later. Senator Ashcroft linked to illegal genetic trials. Then the Washington Post, the New York Times, The Guardian, NPR, and a dozen other outlets. Within 20 minutes, it was the only story that mattered. Mateo's phone rang non-stop. Journalists, lawyers, federal prosecutors who weren't in Ashcroft's pocket. The careful dam of silence had broken. And the flood was unstoppable. On screen, shaky footage showed federal agents raiding the Hale Institute's main facility. Emergency lights, people being led out in handcuffs, news helicopters circling overhead. They got Director Hale, Jax reported, monitoring police scanners. Taken into custody at his home in Evanston. Ashcroft's gone to ground. No public statements, lawyers stonewalling. And Cross? Dashiell asked. No sign. She disappeared after we extracted. Lennox wasn't surprised. Sister Evangeline Cross was a survivor herself, in the worst way. She'd outlast them all if given the chance. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sterling. They're coming for our statements. FBI, DOJ. They want everything. Similar messages from Bryn, Thayer, and Arden. The survivors were stepping into the light, willingly becoming witnesses against the people who'd created them. Paloma's foundation, Lennox said suddenly. The one she set up for survivors. It's still active, right? Mateo nodded. She established it 2 years ago. Dormant since her death, but the infrastructure's there. Legal status, financial accounts, everything. Activate it, Lennox said. Use the media attention. Every survivor who comes forward needs protection, legal support, medical care. The foundation becomes their lifeline. That's a massive undertaking, Jax warned. We're talking about potentially hundreds of victims across multiple facilities. Then we make it work, Lennox replied. Paloma started this. We finish it properly, not just exposing the conspiracy, but actually saving the people they tried to destroy. If this emotional hit landed for you too, subscribe. The system that sold children is about to face judgment. Dashiell was quiet, watching the news coverage. A photo of Paloma appeared on screen. Her official journalist headshot. Those violet-gray eyes bright with life. She'd have loved this, he said softly. The whole world paying attention. Nowhere for them to hide. She'd have hated the credit, Mateo countered. She always said the story mattered, not the byline. Then we make sure her name is on it anyway, Lennox said. Every article, every report. Paloma Reyes, investigative journalist, murdered for exposing institutional corruption. Make her the face of this. The morning sun crept over the lake. Lennox hadn't slept. None of them had. But exhaustion felt distant, secondary to the adrenaline of watching 2 decades of secrecy collapse in real time. At 8:23 a.m., Senator Gerard Ashcroft made his first mistake. He stood before cameras, gray hair perfect, face composed in practiced dignity. These allegations are categorically false. A politically motivated attack by criminals who broke into a legitimate medical research facility and stole fabricated documents. The journalists erupted with questions. Ashcroft pushed through them. I have served this nation for 30 years. My record speaks for itself. This conspiracy theory, promoted by a known criminal, he meant Dashiell, will be thoroughly investigated and dismissed. Senator, a journalist shouted, how do you explain the genetic evidence, the survivors who match the Institute's medical records? Fabricated, Ashcroft said smoothly. Modern technology can create convincing forgeries. I have faith in the judicial system to expose this fraud. But his eyes betrayed him, the slight tremor in his hands, the way he kept glancing at his lawyers. He knew the walls were closing in. By noon, the first federal prosecutor had announced a grand jury investigation. By evening, 3 members of the Hale Institute's board had resigned. By midnight, Director Vincent Hale was formally charged with dozens of counts of child endangerment, illegal human experimentation, and murder. Sister Evangeline Cross remained at large. The cemetery was quiet. North Shore Memorial Gardens, where Paloma Reyes had been laid to rest 3 months earlier beneath a simple headstone that read, Truth Seeker, Defender, Beloved. Lennox stood before the grave, Dashiell beside her. They'd come at dawn, before the media could track them down, before the next wave of interviews and depositions. She was right, Lennox said quietly. About all of it. The conspiracy, the network, the survivors being the key to exposing it. She was always right, Dashiell replied. Drove me crazy sometimes. She saved us. All of us. Lennox touched the headstone. Sterling, Bryn, Thayer, Arden, me. Even the kids still in those facilities. She gave us our lives back. At the cost of her own. They stood in silence, watching the sun rise over the graves of strangers. What now? Lennox asked. Ashcroft's going down. Hale's in custody. The Institute's collapsed. What comes after? Dashiell pulled out his phone, showing her a message from Mateo. It was a list, Names, locations, ages. 47 children recovered from Hale facilities across the country in the past 12 hours. Subject 101 through Subject 147. All safe now. All freed. Now we make sure they stay safe, Daschle said. Paloma's foundation. We make it real. Legal team, medical support, therapy, education, whatever they need to build lives that weren't stolen from them. And Cross? His expression hardened. I'm done letting Paloma's killers walk free. Cross will answer for what she did. I promise you that. Lennox understood. This wasn't over. Ashcroft might fall, Hale might face trial, but the woman who'd pulled the trigger on Paloma was still out there. Still dangerous. But that was tomorrow's battle. Today, they'd won something that mattered. 47 children freed. Dozens more survivors stepping into the light. A conspiracy exposed. Justice. Imperfect and incomplete, but real. Thank you, Lennox said to the headstone, knowing Paloma couldn't hear but needing to say it anyway. For fighting, for not giving up, for making us strong enough to finish what you started. They turned to leave, but Lennox paused. On the grave, someone had left fresh flowers. Lilies, Paloma's favorite. Beside them, a note in handwriting Lennox didn't recognize. The truth will always win, eventually. Mateo? She asked Dashiell. Probably, but his expression suggested he wasn't sure. As they walked back to the car, Lennox looked back one more time. The sun caught the headstone, making the words glow. Truth seeker, defender, beloved. And somewhere in the city, Sister Evangeline Cross was reading the same headlines, watching the same coverage, planning her next move in a game she'd already lost but refused to concede. The war wasn't over. But for the first time in 20 years, the survivors were winning. 6 months later, justice had a new address. Lennox stood in front of floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Michigan Avenue. The office was new, modern, designed to project exactly what the Paloma Reyes Foundation needed: legitimacy, permanence, and purpose. On the wall behind her desk hung a portrait. Paloma in her journalist days, mid-laugh, those violet-gray eyes bright with the kind of determination that changed the world. Ms. Vale? Her assistant, a young woman named Claire who'd been Subject 89 from the California facility, appeared in the doorway. The survivors group session starts in 10 minutes, and Senator Ashcroft's sentencing hearing is about to begin. Mateo set up a live stream in the conference room if you want to watch. I'll be there, Lennox said. She'd stepped away from the museum 6 months ago. The quiet life of a curator felt like someone else's dream now. This, coordinating legal support for 147 survivors, managing therapy programs, fighting for justice against an institutional conspiracy, this was who she'd become. In the conference room, Daschle, Mateo, and Jax were already watching the federal courthouse feed. Senator Gerard Ashcroft sat at the defendant's table, diminished in a way that money and power couldn't hide. His lawyers had fought hard, but the evidence was overwhelming. Genetic records, financial transactions, testimony from survivors, video footage from the facilities. Paloma's meticulously documented investigation. Daschle's recovered data from the Institute's archives. The judge, a woman Ashcroft had never managed to compromise, began reading the sentence. Gerard Michael Ashcroft, you have been found guilty on 43 counts of conspiracy, child endangerment, human trafficking, and accessory to murder. The court sentences you to 35 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. The courtroom erupted. Journalists shouted questions. Ashcroft's lawyers immediately filed notice of appeal. But it didn't matter. He was going to prison. The first domino in a conspiracy that was still collapsing. Director Hale's trial starts next month, Mateo reported. Prosecution's going for life without parole. And 3 more Institute board members were indicted yesterday. Any word on Cross? Lennox asked. Still gone, Jack said grimly. But we're close. She made contact with a former associate in Prague. We've got people tracking her. Lennox knew Dashiell wouldn't rest until Paloma's actual killer faced justice. Some wounds didn't heal with prison sentences and convictions. They required blood. She understood it, even if she couldn't condone it. The survivors, she said, changing the subject. How are the new arrivals adjusting? Better than expected, Mateo replied. He pulled up files on his tablet. Subject 112, the girl from Virginia. She's responding well to therapy. Started school last week. Subject 134 still needs medical intervention for his modifications, but the doctors are optimistic. 147 children, all freed, all supported by the foundation Paloma had established and Lennox now ran. It wasn't enough to undo what had been done to them, but it was something, a chance, a future they'd been denied. Sterling called this morning, Lennox added. He's testifying before Congress next week. Bryn's preparing a class action lawsuit against the surviving Institute investors. Thayer and Arden are working with the FBI to identify international buyers. The survivors weren't victims anymore. They were warriors. Paloma would be proud, Dashiell said quietly. She'd say we're not done yet, Lennox corrected. Cross is still out there. The international network is still operational. Children are still being modified somewhere. Then we keep fighting, Mateo said, for as long as it takes. That evening, Lennox faced the truth Paloma had known all along. She returned to her apartment. A new place, secure and anonymous, far from the life she'd built as a quiet curator. On her desk sat Paloma's journal, the leather worn from constant reference. She opened to the final page, the message Paloma had left for whoever found it. To whoever reads this, probably Dash, knowing his stubborn heart, don't let this consume you. The evidence matters. Justice matters. But so does living. Don't let them steal that from you too. P. Below it, 23 was always the strongest. Trust her. Lennox had read it 100 times, but tonight the words felt different. Not a burden, but a benediction. She was living. Fighting, yes. Seeking justice, absolutely. But also building something that mattered. 47 children freed. A foundation that would outlast them all. A legacy that transformed survivors into advocates. Her phone buzzed. Dashiell. Found Cross, Prague confirmed. Moving in 48 hours. She stared at the message. Part of her wanted to tell him to let the authorities handle it. To trust the system that was finally working, prosecuting conspirators and freeing victims. But another part, the part that had been Subject 23, that had been merchandise, that had been erased and rebuilt, understood that some justice couldn't wait for courts. She typed back, "Be careful." His response was immediate. Always. Paloma wouldn't forgive me otherwise. Lennox set down the phone and looked out at Chicago's skyline. Somewhere in that city were other survivors, building lives, learning to be more than the experiments that had created them. Sterling in Seattle, writing code that would change the tech industry. Bryn in Phoenix, fighting legal battles for people who couldn't fight for themselves. Thayer in Boston, analyzing data to expose corruption. Arden in Atlanta, protecting children who needed advocates. And Lennox here, running the foundation that would ensure no survivor ever faced their nightmare alone. She closed Paloma's journal, placing it on the shelf beside medical files marked Subject 23, Cassiopeia. The evidence of what had been done to her, the proof of what she'd overcome. Her eyes, violet gray, 1 in 10 million, artificially created, met their reflection in the window. Once, they'd been a mark of victimhood, a genetic signature that proved she was merchandise. Now they were a weapon, a reminder that survivors didn't break. They transformed. They fought. They won. Paloma Reyes had started this war with a journalist's determination to expose truth. Lennox Vale would finish it with a survivor's refusal to let anyone else be erased. The Institute was destroyed. Ashcroft was in prison. Hale would follow. And Sister Evangeline Cross's time was running out. Justice, Lennox had learned, wasn't a single victory. It was a campaign waged across years, across lives, across generations of survivors who refused to let their stories end in silence. She opened her laptop, pulling up the Foundation's quarterly report. 147 survivors supported. 12 more facilities under investigation. 3 international networks being tracked by Interpol, using evidence the survivors had provided. The war wasn't over. But they were winning. And somewhere, in whatever comes after, Paloma Reyes was watching her husband and her survivors finish what she'd started, knowing her death hadn't been in vain. The truth always wins, eventually.